Hello and welcome to our program Where God Weeps in Depth. My name is Mark Riedemann, and through a series of short stories, we hope to introduce you to the realities of the Catholic Church working in some of the most remote areas around the world, particularly where she suffers discrimination and persecution. Today we're going to be looking at the country of Cambodia. Located in Southeast Asia, it is bordered by Thailand, Laos, and Vietnam. Cambodia is home to nearly 17 million people. 90% of the population are native to Cambodia and are known as Khmer, which means Cambodian. The rest are Chinese, Chams, Thais, and Vietnamese. Cambodia is today one of the world's poorest countries. Agriculture makes up the most important part of the economy. Rice production and fishing employ 60% of the country's population, while the clothing and tourism industries show growth potential. The treasure of the nation, however, lies in its cultural and religious heritage.
Legend says that Cambodia was born from a dance. Prae Tong, a Hindu prince exiled from Delhi, encountered the daughter of the Serpent King, who seduced him with a sensual dance. The bride's father gifted the young couple a new land called Kampuchea. Hindu, Brahmin, and Buddhist traditions immortalized in the monumental reliefs of the Angkor Wat Temple are the world's most famous showcase of Cambodia. The holy city of Angkor was the capital of the Khmer Empire from the 9th to the 15th century. Covering an area of 84 square kilometers, inhabited by approximately 1 million people with 250 temple buildings, made it the largest city in the world prior to the 19th century Industrial Revolution.
Cambodia's reputation as a nation of peaceful coexistence was shattered in the early 1970s when Cambodia was brutally ravaged by a civil war and genocide.
The Khmer Rouge attempted to organize society into rural communes by means of brute force. The price of this bloody utopia was a country changed into a collective labor, re-education, and extermination camp. Schools, hospitals, and factories were closed. Banks and money were abolished. Religious practices and the ownership of private property were banned. It is estimated that during Pol Pot's reign, which lasted less than 4 years, some 2 million Cambodian citizens, almost a quarter of the population, were either murdered, died of starvation or disease. The whole country was covered in mass graves, the killing fields. Hundreds of thousands of the regime's starving victims, deprived of any medical care, sought refuge in refugee camps along the border with Thailand. In early January 1979, Vietnamese troops and Cambodian guerrillas entered Cambodia. Pol Pot's troops retreated to the mountainous western part of the country. Despite signing the 1991 peace agreement, various military groups continued fighting until 1998. The war finally ended with Pol Pot's death. Years later, the actions of the Khmer Rouge were universally recognized as genocide.
Today, the Cambodian people are still coming to terms with the appalling suffering they experienced and the devastating loss of family members and friends. Under the Prime Minister Hun Sen's government, many of their human and political rights remain compromised. As a result, religious freedom is somewhat fragile but generally respected. The vast majority of the population is Buddhist, with most adhering to Theravada Buddhism. Almost 3% of the population are Christian, and Islam accounts for almost 2%. Before 1970, there were approximately 65,000 Catholics in a total population of 6.5 million. About 80% were Vietnamese who had lived in Cambodia for generations. With the arrival of Pol Pot's regime in the 1970s, all religions and religious practices were forbidden, and the Catholic Church was practically annihilated. Just before Pol Pot's capture of Phnom Penh, 16,000 Catholics had taken shelter in the capital. Sensing the impending danger, this small community of believers tried to prepare for the hard times and to maintain the country's apostolic succession by ordaining the first Khmer bishop. A witness to this dark period is Father François Ponchou, who, as a foreigner, was forced to leave Cambodia. This next story will also feature the sister of Bishop Salas, that first Khmer bishop, who explains her life under the brutal rule of Pol Pot and the heroic faith and martyrdom of the Catholic Church.
បានមកគាត់មកដល់គឺចាប់ដើមចូលដល់ខែមេសាហើយមេសាឆ្នាំ75នៅពេលហ្នឹងយើងក៏មានគូវឺហ្វឺហ្នឹងគេបិទផ្លូវបិទអីទាំងអស់សង្គ្រាមវាកាន់តែធំឡើងអាសង្គ្រាមស៊ីវិលរបស់យើងហ្នឹងវាកាន់តែខ្លាំងឡើងហើយដល់ពេលហ្នឹងទៅគេជនបរទេសទាំងអស់គឺត្រូវចេញពីស្រុកខ្មែរនៅពេលហ្នឹងលោកអភិបាលព្រះសាគុំលោកអភិបាលអ៊ីរ៉ាមូសហើយជាមួយនឹងគ្រីបបរិស័ទទាំងអស់ក៏ជុំគ្នារីកិតត្រូវតែងតាំងលោកអស្លាស់ឲ្យធ្វើជាលោកអភិបាលឧបត្ថម្ភភៈជំនួសលោកអភិបាលអ៊ីរ៉ាមូសហើយក៏កំណត់ជ្រើសរើសយកថ្ងៃទី14មេសាឆ្នាំ1975ហ្នឹងដើម្បីតែងតាំងលោកស្លាស់ហ្នឹងធ្វើជាអភិបាលឧបត្ថម្ភភៈហើយនៅក្នុងពេលកំពុងតែតែងតាំងហ្នឹងគាត់ផ្លោងក៏វាធ្លាក់មកចិត្តព្រះវិហារហ្នឹងទាំងអស់គ្នាក្រាបចុះនៅពេលដែលយើងកំពុងធ្វើបន់តែងតាំងហ្នឹងមុនដែលយើងសូត្រធម៌អង្វរសន្តបុគ្គលចា៎
Les Khmers rouges sont arrivés le 17 avril vers 10 heures le matin. À 3 heures de l'après-midi, l'église du Cambodge était détruite. Nous étions quelques prêtres devant l'évêché et on regardait la population qui était expulsée vers la ville. À 3 heures de l'après-midi, nous avons vu tous les chrétiens partir devant nous et aller à la campagne. Depuis, on n'en a revu aucun. Tous, ou presque, sont morts.
ដល់ពេលរហ័យស្ទឹងរាល់យប់ពេលថ្ងៃយើងទៅធ្វើការតាមដែលគេចាត់ចោលយើងធ្វើហើយយើងកាលនោះយើងអ្នកអំពេញដឹងស្រាប់ហើយយកអត់ទាំងស្គាល់ដើមស្រូវច្បាស់លាស់មិនផងអីផងហ្នឹងគេឲ្យយើងទៅចាប់ដើមធ្វើស្រែធ្វើអីហ្នឹងតាមពេលឲ្យគេចែកឲ្យស្រេចហើយចំពោះការដែលយើងរងទុក្ខវេទនាគឺយើងដូចគេដូចឯងចឹងយើងងើបតាំងពីម៉ោង3ម៉ោង4ភ្លឺដែលគេគួរជួងឡើងគេហៅយើងទៅឲ្យធ្វើស្រែធ្វើចំការហើយយកអត់មានអីញ៉ាំទេគេឲ្យតែទឹកបបររាវហ្នឹងញ៉ាំហើយលោកស្លាស់ចុងការគាត់ក៏ឈឺទៀតហើយសម្រាប់អ្នកឈឺគេអត់ឲ្យយើងញ៉ាំទេគេថាអ្នកឈឺញ៉ាំអីអត់បានដល់អញ្ចឹងគេឲ្យតែទឹកបបររាវហ្នឹងឲ្យញ៉ាំនៅពេលហ្នឹងការងាររបស់អង្គការគឺមានជាប់រហូតតែដល់ពេលយប់ឡើងគេហៅយើងមកប្រជុំគ្នាគេឲ្យប្រជុំហ្នឹងគេហៅថាមេទិញគេហៅយើងប្រជុំហ្នឹងនៅពេលណាដែលយើងចាប់ផ្ដើមយល់ភាសារបស់ប៉ុលពតទោះបីគេនិយាយជាភាសាខ្មែរក៏តែជាភាសាពិសេសរបស់គេណាគឺយើងត្រូវចាប់ផ្ដើមយល់អំពីរបៀបដែលគេនិយាយរបៀបរបស់អង្គការដែលគេចាប់ផ្ដើមគេចាប់ធ្វើកិច្ចការជាមួយនឹងប្រជាជនគេឲ្យយើងគោរពអង្គការគេឲ្យយើងដឹងគុណអង្គការគេអត់មានឲ្យយើងជឿលើព្រះជាម្ចាស់ទេហើយជាពិសេសគេនិយាយច្បាស់អញ្ចឹងហ្មងគេថាសាសនាកាតូលិកសាសនាព្រះគ្រីស្ទគឺជាសាសនាបតិកិរិយាដូច្នេះយើងទាំងអស់គ្នាយើងមិនហ៊ាននិយាយថាយើងមានជំនឿបើគេនៅក្នុងសម័យហ្នឹងសូម្បីតែពុទ្ធក៏គេអត់ឲ្យកាន់អ៊ីស្លាមក៏អត់
Of the 65,000 Cambodian Catholics alive in the early 1970s, only some 3,000 survived by the end of the 1990s. After 30 years of unimaginable violence and suffering, almost every Cambodian family has had to come to terms with the trauma of the past, but also to learn to live anew. The Catholic Church, too, has had to rebuild not so much the buildings, though most all were destroyed, but rather the communities of the faithful.
ដោយសារលោកស្លាប់តែងតែនិយាយឲ្យគេថាទោះបីយើងជួបការលំបាកទោះបីយើងអត់ឃ្លានទោះបីយើងអត់មានអ្វីដែលយើងត្រូវញ៉ាំអត់មានថ្នាំសង្កូវអីក៏ដោយហ្នឹងណាគឺយើងត្រូវតែថ្វាយជីវិតទៅព្រះជាម្ចាស់យើងទៅតែថែរក្សាជំនឿរបស់យើងឲ្យបានមុខមាំណាដើម្បីព្រះជាម្ចាស់ដើម្បីព្រះសហគមន៍របស់យើងចុងការយើងលួចថ្វាយអភិបុជាជាមួយគ្នាដោយស្ងាត់អត់ឲ្យខ្មែរក្រហមដឹងទេយើងប្រយ័ត្នពួកដឹងស្រាប់ហើយនៅប៉ុលពតកូនក្មេងទូចហ្នឹងគឺជាកងឆ្លូបណាមកក្បែរយើងមកក្បែរផ្ទះយើងមកក្បែរខ្ទមយើងហ្នឹងគឺជាកងឆ្លូបដូច្នេះយើងប្រយ័ត្នគ្រប់ជំហានទាំងអស់ហើយពេលដែលជុំគ្នាហ្នឹងយើងឆ្លៀតទៅរោចេករោក្ដួយអីមកញ៉ាំផងហើយឆ្លៀតលោកពេលហ្នឹងដែលលោកចាប់លោកហ៊ានធ្វើថ្វាយអភិបុជាដោយស្ងាត់ជាមួយគ្នាយើងថ្វាយបូជាដោយធ្វើកិច្ចការផ្សេងនៅជុំវិញខ្លួនណាហើយម៉ែខ្ញុំឯហ្នឹងធ្វើអង្គចេកធ្វើអីទៅតែយើងរួមនៅក្នុងថ្វាយអភិបុជាហើយយើងអត់មានប៉ែងកាលីមានអីទេយើងយកត្រឡោកយកអីយកមកយើងធ្វើជាប៉ែងកាលីហើយនំហ្នឹងប្រហែលជាលោកជាប់នឹងខ្លួនហ្នឹងតិចតួចយកមកថ្វាយអភិបុជាពេលហ្នឹងទើបយើងដឹងថាឥឡូវនេះយើងឆ្លងផុតហើយណាដល់យើងងាកទៅក្រៅវិញបានយើងឃើញថាពិតមែនបើគិតតាមការដែលវាបំផ្លាញគតិពីអស់អត់មានលោកពុកអត់មានដូនជីអត់មានគ្រីបាសាទណានៅច្រើនទេយើងនៅសល់តិចតួចទៅពេលហ្នឹងបានយើងឃើញថាព្រះជាម្ចាស់ស្មោះត្រង់មួយយើងព្រះជាម្ចាស់អត់ដាល់ចោលយើងម្ដងណាទេហើយនៅពេលដែលចេញពីប៉ុលពតមកយើងដឹងអត់មានអ្នកណាទាំងអស់នៅសល់គ្នាតិចតួចមែនតើដែលសារពីរោះបើខ្ញុំគិតថានៅក្នុងពេលនេះនៅក្នុងភូមិភាគភ្នំពេញខ្ញុំចង់និយាយពីភ្នំពេញមួយទាំងមូលយើងមាននៅសល់គ្នាប្រហែល20-30នាក់ប៉ុណ្ណឹងដែលជាគ្រីបាសាទហើយអត់មានប្រុសប្រមាណទេប្រុសស្លាប់អស់នៅប៉ុលពតនៅសល់តែស្រីមេម៉ាយកូនកំព្រានៅសល់តែកូនកំព្រាកូនអីហ្នឹងហើយនឹងចាស់ម្នាក់ពីរនាក់ប៉ុណ្ណឹងអូស្លាប់ទាំងអស់ហើយនៅសល់តែ2នាក់3នាក់ហ្នឹងមើលខ្ញុំយើងមួយទៀតពីក្មួយខ្ញុំ24-25នាក់
Ensuite, après 1991, nous avons pu revenir de France. Alors nous sommes revenus au Cambodge, mais tout était détruit. Et nous n'avons pas réussi à sauver la moindre édifice religieux, tout était détruit. Alors là, nous avons commencé à rassembler à nouveau tous les chrétiens que nous découvrions peu à peu. Et malgré tout, un certain nombre de Cambodgiens non chrétiens étaient intéressés par notre fidélité au peuple khmer. Même s'il y avait eu la guerre, même s'il y avait la révolution, même s'il y avait la révolution vietnamienne, nous étions là à leur service. Et c'est ce qui les a attirés un peu à l'Église catholique.
The challenge facing the church in the post-Khmer Rouge period was how to reach out with the message of the gospel to a broken society, how to help the Khmers address and heal the wounds of the past, how to be a sign of unity and openness, being close to the people, their problems, and to serve all their needs. In the previous story, Father Francois mentioned that people were attracted to the church by the way that its members were there to serve. In the letters of St. John, we are urged to love, not in word or speech, but in truth and action. Bishop Enrique Figadero, a Spanish missionary known as the Bishop of the Wheelchairs, lives these words by providing support and hope for people who have been mutilated by the landmines which still lace the killing fields.
We still have like 200 accidents per year, like 5 accidents per week, and it's terrible. They are hidden in places that only poor people are walking there, because they go to work in the rice fields or in the forest or hunting. The last one that we have here in Arupe Center is Samet, a little boy who was playing and he had the explosion of a landmine in his hands. Science got that was very old, so he lost only one arm and the fingers of another, and he lost the view of one eye completely, and the other maybe can see 10%. But when you see that a little tractor going in the countryside with full of people, all poor people going to work in the field and step on a landmine, these are anti-tank landmines, and big explosion and maybe 10 people killed and 6 injured and maybe 6 families completely destroyed, and people say why? Ada yang bapa ya tahu cuma gini ya? Hello, sok sabay? Ya mai.
Sabay.
Sabay. Yen yo rote mau, đáng thế? Đáng rồi. Này guru bapa berapa?
Ya.
Ane bene guru bapa berapa iklah? Del yang yo rote, aneng yang terlalu ayak kau, angkau nol rote, ban? Aneng lagu buk na bon rian pra, kong chef pra, hai ya. Miền công lăng. Miền, or công pra. Miền nghịch, yang rote, miền công lăng đam mê khát, nào cầm mốc, phok tiếng không?
Nhằm nom tiệt. Nom sô cô la.
Please. Opuk roncam kau angkau nol rote. Oh, ane dah ceng nak nol. Ini ane ai trong. Ane semua ini ceng. Ane. Kian cuma beli mai. Mai cuma beli ya. Chùm rập lia đài, ở con charan. Chùm rập lia, tang ngày chan chụp cái nia. Chùm rập lia cho cái nia. Okay, Makai. To, dito Arupe. Now we take the girl to Arupe Center. Arupe Center it's a welcoming house that we have for youth and children with disabilities. What we try with this little home, that now maybe we have about 20 children, is children or youth, is to provide education to young people who are disabled. They are very poor. They are living in the countryside and they have no access to education. Are you happy? I am very happy to bring you to meet your friends. If you are happy, I am happy too. Chồng vô, mà nè tham ấy, mà pe, một đô la rupe. Chồng rập xua, tiếng Anh nha. Chồng rập xua, rong tàu bắn tóc. The wheelchair was making a big change to their life. Something that is beautiful. It's like when we have a car. The Mekong wheelchair makes the person to come from the floor up and to have movement. When you are in the floor or in the bed, inside, the reality doesn't move. You are static, no air. But the wheelchair brings you movement and you can go from your room to the market, to the temple, to the school. This is a very basic thing that makes a real change in life.
For Monsignor Figadero, though it is impossible to get used to the suffering of the Cambodian people, there are sparks of hope. He explains that his role is to accompany, and that ultimately it is not he offering solutions or resolving things, but God. A fellow missionary, Father Luca, shares his experience of missionary life in Cambodia.
Quando sono arrivato mi sembrava di essere un po' alla fine del mondo e mi sentivo molto missionario, proprio quelli proprio che vivono nella situazioni estreme. Era molto narcisista come idea di missionario. Adesso che sono qui da vari anni mi sento al centro del mondo, all'ombelico del mondo, si dice in italiano. La prima cosa che ho capito, prima di tutto, è esserci, fisicamente, no? Essere qua. È l'incarnazione, cioè essere con la propria carne. Io sono qui col mio corpo. Il mio corpo che ci ha messo molto ad adattarsi. Il mio corpo ci sta, ma il rischio è che il cuore sia da un'altra parte, per cui con internet, cioè il rischio di essere veramente da un'altra parte. Ecco, quello che cerco di fare è di essere presente col corpo e col cuore per queste persone. Ye cái trong xua ta ye chưa presu tampion kal.
Ôi, đã mình cả nà thế, là mình chọn lông đâu ấy là lông một nó mình kết chẳng hạn, nhưng mà đừng có.
Siamo una piccola presenza, siamo i cattolici in Cambogia 0,15%. Questo è un villaggio cristiano, è conosciuto da secoli. Ci troviamo in un comune dove c'è una fortissima presenza musulmana. Semplificando potremmo dire che da questa parte abbiamo la comunità musulmana e da quest'altra parte la comunità buddista. Ecco, siamo tra questi due poli. Il buddismo è dove l'uomo è presente quasi senza Dio. Nell'Islam a volte si ha l'impressione che sia Dio senza l'uomo, semplificando. E noi siamo Dio e l'uomo abbracciati insieme, noi in Gesù. Io percepisco veramente il dono che siamo in questo luogo.
Although the return of priests and missionaries to Cambodia ensured the survival and growth of the country's small Catholic community, during the persecution itself, faith was often preserved by individuals within a village community who catechized and kept the faith alive. Father Totet recounts the story of a woman who, through prayer and perseverance, brought her village to share in the life and the hope she encountered in Christ.
The people live here mostly as fishermen, but it's a very difficult existence. It's because of overfishing, they can only get very, very small fish. And in fact, even that, it's very difficult now. Rice is a main problem. The next is what to eat the rice with. Here you cannot plant vegetables because we are all in water. So that's the difficulty. This church is called Rektoal. It is at the mouth of the river coming from Battambang into the lake. There are about 50 people who are baptized and many, many children. And some people are still studying for the baptism, which will take about 4 years. This community was started by an old lady who is very beautiful because she tried to pray with other people here. For more than 15 years, she was here alone as a Catholic. There was no priest or there was no Christian community to support her. But every Christmas, she would gather her neighbors and they celebrate the birth of Jesus.
ហើយខ្ញុំសប្តាហ៍នេះខ្ញុំអរគុណព្រះជាម្ចាស់ដែលទ្រង់បានប្រទានពរឲ្យខ្ញុំស្គាល់បងប្អូននៅក្នុងភូមិព្រៃតនស្គាល់ព្រះជាម្ចាស់យ៉ាងច្រើនហើយកូនក៏ក្នុងចិត្តរបស់កូនសប្តាហ៍កូនមានចិត្តធម៌មេត្តាករុណាឲ្យក្នុងគ្រីស្ទបរិស័ទយើងឲ្យជួបជុំគ្នាជាធំតែមួយដើរតាមពន្លឺរបស់ព្រះជាម្ចាស់តែមួយឲ្យជាយាមថាកូនស្រឡាញ់ព្រះជាម្ចាស់អញ្ចឹងកូនត្រូវអប់រំក្នុងចិត្តកូនរៀបចំថាថ្ងៃណាមួយទ្រង់ឲ្យមានព្រះវិហារនៅក្នុងភូមិព្រៃតលនេះ អញ្ចឹងកូនត្រូវរៀបចំនៅក្នុងទីនេះឲ្យបងប្អូនគេស្គាល់ពីមុនគេស្គាល់ទេឥឡូវកូនត្រូវរៀបចំដើម្បីឲ្យបងប្អូនស្គាល់ព្រះជាម្ចាស់ជាព្រះអង្គសង្គ្រោះរៀបចំឲ្យបងប្អូនដើរតាមពន្លឺរបស់ព្រះអង្គទោះបីគេមិនស្គាល់យ៉ាងណាក៏គង់ថ្ងៃណាគេស្គាល់ព្រះជាម្ចាស់ជាព្រះអង្គសង្គ្រោះដែរ
The church in Cambodia today, although very small and officially not allowed to evangelize, serves as it can by being a witness of faith and charity to the majority Buddhist population. And many come to see. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for having been with us today in our program, Where God Weeps in Depth. And if you'd like to know more about the situation of the suffering church in Cambodia, or perhaps how you might be able to help, I would encourage you to look at the contact information at the end of this program. And we look forward to seeing you next week. Take care.